maybe that's not the right way to put it, isn't if you're producing art, right? If you're producing art and you are allowing the world to see the art that you're producing. This is kind of an existential question, right? But if you're doing
Right.
that, you're doing this thing that you love, and you're doing it without constraint, right? Without stress, without constraint, things of that nature, and you're just able to freely do that, and you have the opportunity to present it to the world. Is that, or do you believe that that is a form of giving?
I think Yanni, you do, right?
Yeah.
Yanni sees it that way. Um, for me, possibly, but I know a lot of times what I do creatively has no intention other than just me expressing myself. And sometimes it's just a beat is just a beat. There's no meaning behind a beat. Or sometimes a piece of art is just me playing around on canvas. There's no meaning, profound meaning that somebody should walk away with or anything like that. It's just a pretty thing or something that sounds pleasing to my ear. Though in those cases, I don't necessarily look at those as giving in the way that I would like to give or giving as much as I would like to give. I feel like I could give more than that. And that's something that just drives me. I get a certain feeling when I see that somebody who has not had, who's been starved for resources or has been blocked for resources, now has some resources that will help them go somewhere else. There's just a certain feeling I get from that, that I maybe it's an addiction problem, but there's something I get from that I would like to continue experiencing. Like hearing
Okay.
the feedback from other artists that have been helped in the past and seeing what it's meant to them and seeing what their lives have been like since, we've collaborated or done certain things. That makes me feel, that excites me about waking up each day, knowing that somebody else may avoid,
So,
and also seeing my path because I didn't have those resources and how I shut that down and how my life is completely different now. I'd like more people to be able to
mhm.
unplug from that matrix too, because I think that in the end makes a better world for all of us.
So I'll ask again in a different way because what you just said, right? You just said like the feedback that you get from someone you collaborated with and how things have changed for them. Is it different if, like you said, if you do art, it's just a pretty thing, or if make a beat is just something that you like to hear? If you get feedback on said beat, said piece of art, said video, and that feedback is positive, that feedback is, um, you know, this beat got me through this tough situation, or watching you record yourself, just whatever is that feedback, is it different than the feedback that you just described?
That's a good question. I don't know. I have to think
That
about
was
that.
gonna be
Yeah,
my question to
yeah,
you too.
yeah.
So
And
I'm
then
glad that
after,
comes from Matt.
yeah, and
Because
after the artist talk last week too, I think that was another. That it was. It's a new experience for me experiencing this. So I'm wondering about this.
And we literally had my mom's neighbor yesterday who's an old white lady, either in her 60s or 70s, possibly older, but she's just gotten on social media and has her own business and is all about sharing, positive stuff and her Christian faith. But she literally pulled up in her driveway as we were pulling up to my mom's house, got out the car, crossed our yard. She's terrified of dogs. We had Zen. She still came over and was like, I just had to say, seeing you guys on social media, seeing what you post and talk about, seeing you just open up and share yourselves, just like, I'm inspired. I want to be able to do that. You seem like you were made for social media, or social media was made for you. And I was like, wow, that's impact that I, of all people, would never have expected to receive from her, of all people, that I would be
Right.
inspiring her, or that we would be inspiring her, because I grew up being inspired by her because she's the only person who I knew intimately who was an artist. She and her husband were both professional artists. So they were part of what made me believe that I could
Mm,
too be an artist. So then to hear from her, no, you've inspired me. I'm really trying to figure out social media because I see how you guys have been able to do it. And then by the end of the conversation, she was like, I also just realized, you know what? it's the fear of rejection. That's why I don't want to be on social media. And I'm inspired by seeing you just be out there and be all that you are and be like, take it or leave it. And I'm trying to embody a little bit of that. And Shaah shared how it was hard for him to get there. And she was like, well, I can't tell. You guys both seem like you're perfect and you're doing amazing things. So I love that you asked him that question, because that's the same thing I've been wondering for him, because we've had this conversation several times. And he's like, you feel like just being yourself and existing is of service? And I was like, it may sound crazy and egoic, but I feel like, yes. I was like, I feel like what I do, the art I produce, the things I create, I feel like they impact people. And even if that's not my intention when I created it, it was healing for me when I created it. And I find that when I share it, someone else is just like, either I see myself, or like you said, this beat got me through a moment, an experience. This painting made me think of my mother and I miss her so much. And so thank you for this moment. I got to feel like I felt her energy, her spirit. So thank you for asking that question. I just had to come over and say that because that made me very happy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Proud of you.
I think, you know, when you think about service, like service is a spec. I don't know if it's a spectrum when it comes to service and help. And sometimes the help that you provide or the service that you provide can go unbeknownst to you.
Yeah.
And that's just that. I think that comes with whatever it is that we do. Like, so I would challenge you. This is kind of off of the finance part stuff, but I would challenge you to rethink what you believe helping or service is.
Yeah.
Not to say that what you think is right or wrong, but I would just challenge that, because the same way that something impacted you, that the person or the piece or the thing, you may have never had an opportunity to acknowledge that impact, doesn't make the impact any smaller. That's the same thing that you are doing. You just might not be receiving the feedback to kind of fuel that fire. Yeah. So the fire has to be fueled by the belief that it's impactful, regardless of the intent from the beginning, right? So that's just off on a little tangent there. But
I think you also kind of see it in subliminal ways, like the videos that get a bunch of views, and you see some of those views are from specific people that they never engage, never say anything to you, never comment, but they're watching.
Yes, I don't even do that. I don't look at analytics. So I don't.
But then what you have sometimes, and then you see behavior change, or the guy from high school who you had a random DM, didn't know that he was paying any mind, but then hit you up and was like, yo, what you've been doing has changed my life. And seeing you actually pursue music and do the things in high school made an impact. And I never knew how to say that to you, but I have to tell you today, like, it's made a difference for me. And you had no idea that he was even paying attention to the cause, to see it, but believing, and I know we got the whole thing about
the belief. I think the belief. Yeah.
Malcolm, you have brought up a whole layer of things. We have this conversation quite often.
She's so excited right now.
He does not. Well, it's because
you're rightfully excited. You're rightfully excited because this is progress. This has been a journey for us both.
Because to him, belief kind of equates to religion, and we are non-religious, and to him, belief equates essentially to believing in a fictitious God or something that's not real. And so he finds it difficult to have belief when it seems there's no basis for the belief. And he's very information, knowledge, numbers, proof driven. And so when we get into the belief territory, it's just like, that's either airy-fairy or that's getting too close to, okay, there's a God.
I don't know if that's the way of summarizing it, but yeah, it's just
from my perspective, from our conversation.
For me, the word belief is just hard to work with. It's eventually I need the way my mind works, I need some sort of proof, and I think I'm learning and developing in that sense to a degree. Like I had to learn learn to understand the difference between the words faith and hope before. I used to equate the two. So I'm definitely on a journey in that front. And then the conversations we've been having about your belief that your art is service, and witnessing and seeing how people have responded to your art and how I've seen other people seeing it outside of me, I guess has helped a lot.
Like you were seeing progress. Years of growth here, because this used to be a very sore point for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, a place of contention. So there's been a whole lot of growth. But yes, I'm glad that you're asking him about these things because I'm like, maybe hearing conversation with someone else may tease something else out of that space that I'm incapable of articulating in a way that would create new light or opportunity to explore further. So
yeah. And I guess, I got to take into consideration
You're
there's a lot
right.
of gaslighting that has gone on in the world, especially in the hip hop world. There's been a lot of gaslighting and all that. So there may be some skewing of my vision based on my experiences. I'm still working my way through. So
And I
I'm
wanted to
open to
say,
all
I
tangents.
appreciated you mentioning that last time about being happy about him coming out of some of that humility place and taking on like acknowledging the things that he's doing. I was very happy to hear that and appreciated you acknowledging that as well.
Absolutely. So look, so once again, now I was reading this book called High Power. I forgot what it was called, but anyway, it's a section in the book, and it's called. And he was talking about how highly productive people can kind of fall off, right? And in this section of the book, he talked about the word dissatisfaction. Mm-hmm. And this conversation is reminding me of this section of the book because what he said was high performing people. So you might hear, I've said this before, like especially on the basketball court, I would say something like, "There's always something better," right? And I was not satisfied because there was always this something better, right? His point was that the best performing people were happy. And the reason that they were happy is because they're able to recognize all of the small wins. They take all of those small wins. They're still motivated. Those small wins motivate them to do better, but they take all the small wins, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like you don't take the small wins.
I've started to.
It sounds like that there's this I have to do better because there's this result that's needed instead of seeing what you've done and taking those wins and letting those wins motivate as opposed to saying I haven't done enough motivation. Yeah. There's two sides of that, right? Still motivating, but instead of the one kind of starts with the negative, I haven't done enough or I'm not doing enough. And the other one is I am doing, and this is what, I'm taking these small wins and I can do more kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what it reminded me of. I had to go apologize to a woman after reading that part of the book because I was like, I wasn't recognizing the good. I could talk about the what wasn't happening, but I wasn't talking about what was. The dissatisfaction led to a negative outcome because not acknowledging the small wins. Dusty, I just challenge you. I'll use the word challenge you to really well, I'll use the word believe that you are or have made a difference and you are making a difference and use that as the motivation as opposed to believing that you are not.
Yeah.
Because the one is going to propel you
too. Because I was like,
further.
I think you don't engage belief, but I was like, I think he subconsciously engages in it, even though I was like, it seems like you struggle to believe positively, but you also believe negatively. You just don't see it as the same thing. Well, I love how you just positioned that as well too.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe, for example, believe in myself and my ability to do things. What I've told you in a number of conversations where my belief breaks down is when it requires other people chipping in. That's when I believing that I can accomplish the things that I really want to accomplish. But I think I've had that big shift in learning to recognize and acknowledge the small wins. Like when I talked to you about the guy from high school and I talked about the little things like, hey, I see this. Okay, I see the line between this thing that's happening now for this person and our interaction, how this may have played a role. That's helped me understand more that there are ways that I am doing that without necessarily having to intentionally go make some initiative to do the thing. So I'm definitely on a road and on a journey to understanding that, to just change my perspective on that. And absolutely, I love what you're saying about intentionally taking time to focus on the small wins, because that has been what's gotten me through. That's how I shifted perspective on Grayscale, for example. And instead of thinking about what it's not doing and how it's not reaching the goals and the things that we set out, or that I had envisioned, looking at what we have and looking at how much we have accomplished, and looking at shifting my focus on to building from what's here, as opposed to trying to building on top of what's here. So I'm definitely in the midst of that, and I love hearing. I need to hear more reminders of things like this, and shifts. I need to read and intake more things like this that'll help me continue this shift, and make a more dramatic shift. So thank you for this part of the conversation. I know this isn't necessarily finance, but I think this does play into all of it. It's AD wellness.
Absolutely. AD wellness. There you go. But
yeah.
All right. So